Lesson 1.1, Interpreting Graphs. The essential question is, how does a histogram help you analyze data? By the end of this lesson, you should be able to answer that question. A bar graph. A bar graph uses bars to represent and compare data. It also uses categories a lot of times, like how many pets you have, what your favorite color is, and you can put down red, blue, or yellow. So again, bar graph usually has categories involved with it. Data are facts, numbers, or numerical information. Frequency table is a table that organizes data into intervals. A histogram uses a frequency table, so you cannot have a histogram until you can create a frequency table. A histogram is a graph where data are organized into equal intervals. Let's talk about the word intervals. Intervals are how we group our data. For example, let's say we have the interval 0 through 4. Then we have the interval 5 through 9. Equal intervals are when they have the same amount of numbers in common. For example, 0 through 4 has 5 numbers to it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 through 9 also has 5 numbers to it. So this next equal interval would be 10 through 14. Again, there's 5 numbers. You also do not want to overlap the intervals, because if something happened 5 times, let's say you watch TV 5 times that day, you don't want to put it into 2 intervals. Example 1. The bar graph to the right shows the number of state parks in 4 states. Use the bar graph to answer the question or explain why you can't answer the question using the graph. Sometimes there are graphs that the questions to a graph that you can't answer by that specific graph. You would need another graph in order to answer that question. Let's look at it. Part A. Which state has the most state parks? Well, you can tell by looking at which bar is higher. And you can see that Iowa has a higher bar, so it is the tallest. And that means that it's going to be the one that has the most state parks. Part B, which state has the largest state parks? Well, let's think about what this bar graph is saying. It's telling you the number of state parks in 4 states. Well, this bar means that there's about 90 state parks in Iowa. Does it tell you which one has the largest? No, it does not. So you cannot answer this question using this bar graph. At this time, please try these 2 problems yourself. You may need to flip back and look at example 1 in order to answer the questions. Pause the video. About how many more state parks does Ohio have than Utah? The answer is 35. And again, this is an approximation, so if you have around that number, it's still correct. Number 2, which state has the least number of state parks? The state that has the least number of state parks would be Maine, because it's the lowest or the smallest bar. Example 2, making a frequency table. The data shows the heights in meters of the 23 tallest waterfalls in the world. Make a frequency table of the data. Okay, first of all, we're going to choose a scale. This is my smallest number to my highest number. If you look at your data that was collected, you can see that the smallest number is 300, where the highest number is 979. So our scale is going to be 300 to 999. We're just going to try to make it as close as possible and still have equal intervals. You can see that they actually went by hundreds. Yes, it may not look like it, but there are 100 numbers between 300 and 399 because you have to count 300. You can see that they did not overlap the numbers, so they stopped at 399 and started back up at 400. Next thing we have to do is use tally marks to record each occurrence of a height. Now they did this for you, you can always see it, but what you would do is go from 365 and I would put a little tally mark in the spot where 365 would occur. I usually like to cross them out at this point. 491, put a tally mark, 739, and you would keep doing this until you get down to the bottom of the data. Next, you want to write down the frequency. This is how many times it occurred, and you can count the tally marks to figure out your frequency. You can see this is 5, 6, 7, so that's 7 frequency. Remember at the beginning I said in order to make a histogram, you first have to do a frequency table. So we're going to use the frequency table in example 2 to create a histogram. First of all, you have to draw and label the horizontal and vertical axes. This is your vertical axis. This is your horizontal axis. We're going to put the scale on the bottom. That's your equal intervals with the number of waterfalls to the left on the vertical axis. Now, how did they come up with the numbers 0 through 8? Well, this is actually your frequency. It's the frequency of waterfalls. So let's go back to example 2. You can see our frequency, the smallest number was 1, the highest number was 7. And we have lots of numbers in between. So I'm going to say, let's just start with 0 because 1 is very close to 0. And just so we can go by 2s, and again, you don't have to go by 2s. You can definitely just do 0 through 7. We're going to go up to 8 though for this example. And we're going to use increments of 2 as I said. We're going to draw a bar to represent each of the frequencies of the intervals. So going back to example 2, 300 to 399 was 7. 7 waterfalls were in there. So you can see we make a bar and we put it up to 7. What you may notice is that in a histogram, the bars of neighboring intervals should touch. This is a big difference between histograms and bar graphs. Histograms, the bars touch. Bar graphs, they actually do not touch. Make sure that you label your vertical and horizontal axes, as they said, and that you actually put a title, what I'm looking at. Using the data in example 3, please answer these questions. Remember, pause the video at this time. Number 3, which interval has the greatest number of waterfalls? Number 4, if you include the next 5 tallest waterfalls, in what interval do you think they will be? Explain your reasoning. Remember back at example 2, this data shows the height of the 23 tallest waterfalls. So the tallest waterfall was at this interval, 900 to 999. Remember, it was our 979. That's the tallest waterfall. The next tallest waterfall was, I believe it's 850. That's lower than the tallest. So if we go down from the tallest, 23, basically smaller than the tallest, the next 5 tallest would actually be between 200 to 299. The data includes 2 waterfalls that have a height of 300 meters, so the next 5 waterfalls will likely be less than 300 meters. You should now be able to answer the question, how does a histogram help you analyze data? You can graph and analyze data by making bar graphs, frequency tables, and histograms. Histograms use intervals in order to determine the frequency of the data.